Now, from the University of Virginia Center for Politics.
Ambassador Series event with His Excellency Lazarus Kapambwe, Ambassador of Zambia to the United States. My name is Damon Irby, and I'm the Director of Global Initiatives at the University of Virginia Center for Politics. I'll be joined today by a number of UVA students who have questions they would like to ask. Plus, we have a question submitted by a UVA Law School alumnus. We may have time for additional questions, so you're welcome to email them to me at irby@virginia.edu. That's IRBY@Virginia, spelled out, .edu. And we'll try to get through all that we can. Today, we're honored to host His Excellency Lazarus Kapambwe. Not only is he the ambassador to the U.S., but he's also the non-residential ambassador to Mexico and every other country in Central America. Minus our friends in Canada, Mr. Ambassador, I think that might unofficially make you the ambassador to North America. I kid, but this tells our audience so much about your experience and capability as a diplomat for Zambia. Your country certainly places a tremendous amount of trust and faith in you. Ambassador Kapambwe arrived in Washington to take on this posting just a couple of months prior to the global COVID shutdown. Before his posting as ambassador to the United States, he served for over 12 years as Zambia's ambassador and permanent representative to the United Nations in New York, including one term as the organization's elected president of the Economic and Social Council, along with other prominent roles. His colleagues clearly hold him in high esteem, as do we. Before Ambassador Kapambwe's time in New York, he served 4 years as Zambia's ambassador to Ethiopia and the African Union, and concurrently with 5 other countries surrounding the Horn of Africa. Prior to that post, he served as the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs after serving as the deputy permanent secretary responsible for Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, along with a wide variety of other roles. His Excellency earned a bachelor's degree in political economy from the University of Zambia, a postgraduate diploma in international relations from Nairobi University in Kenya, and a certificate in contemporary American politics from New York University. Ambassador Kapambwe, welcome, and thank you so much for being a part of the Ambassador Series.
Thank you, Damon, for inviting me to this Ambassadors Series. It's a privilege for me to speak about the relations between Zambia and the United States, and generally about Africa and the United States. You have gone through my bio, so I don't need to spend much time in introducing myself, rather than just to say, since you had asked at the beginning, whether I have been here before, you answered it in your own introductory. But this is the 5th time, actually, that I am serving in the United States. I was in New York 3 times. I have had 3 appointments to New York, to the United Nations. First, as a counselor for political affairs in the 80s, the late 80s, and then twice as permanent representative there, starting from 2007 and then in 2017. There was a break. Actually, it's not a complete 12 years that I stayed in New York. There was a break. I have also served in Ethiopia twice. And besides that, I have served in Germany. But I think the one aspect that I just wanted to mention is that I am the only current serving ambassador in the Zambian diplomatic service that has served all the presidents that we have had in our country. And we are now on our 6th president. So I've been in the service for 40 years and hope to retire very, very soon. Now, I thought that I should just say a few things about Zambia. I know that this is basic information that your students have, but just as a way of framing this discussion, my main interest would be for us to hold a dialogue. And therefore, I'm looking forward to the Q&A section of this event so that I can be guided by what my audience considers to be most important, because we can talk about Zambia and the US for a very, very long time. But I wanted to just situate this discussion from the time of our independence, just to underscore that we are a relatively new country, a relatively young country when you compare to the United States. But we nevertheless are a middle-aged country, I would say, because we have been independent for the past 56 years now. But at the time of our independence in 1964, we were one of 6 countries in the region that we call Southern Africa. And of those, 8 of them were neighbors, are still neighbors to Zambia. We are a landlocked country. And of those 8, only 3 were independent at the time of our own independence, which meant that the roles that we had to play, the evolution of our diplomacy, the evolution of our foreign policy was greatly affected by the circumstances of our independence and our political context, as well as our geography. We are a landlocked country. And with 8 neighbors around us, 5 of whom were under minority governments, we felt we had an obligation to support others also attain independence. And so we became the focal point of the liberation struggle in Southern Africa, the focal point of diplomacy leading to the independence of the other 5 countries bordering us, which were not independent at the time of our independence. But it also had its consequences for us. First, because of the obligation we had, we were the headquarters, or we hosted almost all the liberation movements in Southern Africa. We were, at one time or other, the headquarters for UNITA in Angola and the MPLA in Angola. We were also headquarters at one time to Frelimo in Mozambique. We were the headquarters of the African National Congress, the ANC, until the independence of South Africa, or rather until apartheid in South Africa was abolished and the democracy took root in 1994. Similarly, we were the headquarters for SWAPO in Namibia, and we also hosted as headquarters at one time or other the ZANU-PF and ZAPU, both of them from Zimbabwe. And with that also came the refugees that we had to host, as well as training facilities that we had to provide to those that had taken up arms to fight for their independence. And subsequent to that, we played a key role in the mediation and the negotiations that had to take place. The independence of Angola, the independence of Mozambique, both conferences which led Portugal to grant independence to Mozambique and Angola took place in Lusaka. We are familiar, many of us, with the Lancaster talks that gave rise to the independence of Zimbabwe. But the last conference that of the Commonwealth at which the solution to, or the settlement to the Zimbabwe question was agreed took place in Lusaka in 1979. Similarly, the many meetings that were held to negotiate the independence of Namibia, also a considerable number of them took place in my country. And after that, when we have had conflicts in the region, such as the civil war in Angola and the conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Zambia has provided the mediation in these conflicts. And so in 1994, we had the Lusaka Accord, which led to the settlement of the civil war between UNITA and the MPLA, and that was hosted by us in Lusaka. And then more recently, in 1999, again, it was Zambia that was the mediator in the issue of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And the Lusaka Agreement of 1999, July 1999, provided the framework which then led to the talks in South Africa, the constitutional talks in South Africa that granted peace and the current administrations that have come, and constitution in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So if there is one thing that we have worked very closely with the United States on, it has been on addressing the armed conflicts in our region, the liberation wars in our region, and the peace initiatives and peace settlements that gave birth to many of the independent states in our sub-region. So these are some of the things that distinguish Zambia, and we have had peace ever since our independence in 1964. We have never experienced a civil war, and we have successfully had transitions of government, since that time. We were only the second country in Africa in 1990, 1991 that transitioned successfully, following Benin, from a one-party state to a multi-party democratic state. And in that, we managed to have a transition where the ruling party lost to an opposition party, and the transition was very smooth. And since then, we have had changes of government that have also included not just the changes of the presidents, because our presidents like yours are restricted to 2 terms, but we have had credible elections that have led to loss of elections by the ruling party. The latest of which was in 2011, when the then MMD government lost to the current Patriotic Front government. And on the 12th of August, we are going back to elections. And we are assuring our neighbors and the international community that we will have free and fair elections, peaceful elections, and we are already sending out invitations to all and sundry to come, those who wish to observe our elections, to come and be with us. The United States has always been present in our elections, right from the first ones under a democratic multi-party system in 1991, the Carter Center, the NDC, and sometimes the Republican National Committee have traveled to Zambia as part of the international teams of election observers. And we are similarly extending that invitation to the United States. And they have been a partner, you have been a partner in strengthening our democratic institutions. We are firmly of the view that what guarantees democracy is not the politicians. What guarantees democracy are the institutions, the strength of governance institutions that you have. Politicians come and go, but these institutions ensure that the excesses to which politicians may be prone are kept in check. They also ensure that all the arrangements for the elections are done in such a way as to provide playing a level field to all political players. We don't hear much about Zambia in the United States, and that is mainly because no news is good news. We have been lucky that there haven't been many upheavals to attract international attention, international news. Good things are rarely the subject of international news. But we are an active partner with the United States in the fight for terror, fight against terrorism, in the various programs, including the programs in Mozambique now, where we are having these remnants of Al-Qaeda or ISIS causing trouble. We have been partners with the United States in the struggle for human rights and generally in entrenching peace and security, as well as democratic governance in our continent. So this is what I can say about Zambia. We are more well known perhaps for being one of the top 7 producers of copper in the world. We are second in Africa behind the Democratic Republic of Congo as a producer. But in terms of being an exporter, we are the leading exporter from Africa in terms of the value of the copper that we export. The figures we have, the latest figures are 2020 and 2019. In 2019, we exported copper valued at $5.4 billion. And Congo, which is a bigger producer than ourselves, exported in the region of just under $4 billion. So globally, as I said, we rank after Chile, the US, China, Australia, and the DRC. We come out as the 7th largest producer in the world. But although we are known for copper, there are many other minerals that we produce that anchor our economy. Among the major ones which are known internationally are emeralds. And at one time, I remember that we used to supply 1/3 of all the emeralds that were being traded at the New York Gems exchange. We also were major producers and exporters of cobalt to the United States. At the highest, we were exporting 1/5 of all the cobalt, 20% of all the cobalt that the United States was importing from outside. And now we are also going to be a gold exporter. They have discovered huge seams of gold in our country, and we're just in the process of formalizing the industry. Production has already started. Private individuals who have applied for the mines, for ownership of gold mines, have been granted, and the production of gold has started. But the industry has not been yet fully organized for us really to call ourselves a major player in the gold export. We are largely self-sufficient in terms of the staple foods. We have a huge country the size of Texas, but a population that is just about 18 million people. And so there is vast amounts of land. Fortunately, there are no deserts in my country. And most of the land is arable, it's flat, and is very good for agriculture. So in the staples, we are self-sufficient, and we are exporters to the region. We export coffee. Some of the coffee that you drink in the United States comes from Zambia, especially in the specialty coffee places. We also export sugar and tea. We're more a tea drinker, having been a British colony. The British drink more tea than they do coffee, and so they left that habit with us as well. But we are also a major exporter of tea, and we also are fairly big in tourism as one of the sectors of the economy that we rely on, especially for foreign exchange, being the home to the Victoria Falls, which I believe is one of the, if not the largest, waterfalls in the world. So in brief, this is our country, Zambia, and also this is myself. And I would really now be grateful to yield the floor to you so that I can be directed by our interlocutors in terms of what exactly they would like me to concentrate on in responding. Thank you very much, Dema. You're muted.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
You would think after all this time we would figure that out. So first of all, I want to thank you, Mr. Ambassador. First of all, I'm ready to go to Zambia. It sounds fantastic, and what a fascinating country. I want to start out in our questioning kind of in the direction of the relationship between our countries. Recently, Zambia and USAID announced a project called Transforming Teacher Education that focuses on the development of teachers in the primary grades. Can you share a little information about that and the program's potential benefits?
Well, thank you very much. Indeed, the program called Transforming Teacher Education was launched it was announced by the USAID, but it was an ongoing program already in Zambia. So it was more the partnership with the USAID that was announced, not the beginning of the program. And this program's aim is to strengthen the capacity of Zambia's pre-service teacher training institutions and to improve on the student outcomes. The USAID, through what they call the Learning Systems Institute, which is at Florida State University, is injecting $15 million in this project. And it is in partnership with School to School International, as well as our own, the University of Zambia School of Education. And it will include 12 Zambian universities and colleges of education around the country. And essentially, it is about improving the training of primary grade teachers in early grade literacy. Through a baseline assessment which has been done of 12 colleges and universities, the project will identify existing strengths, the resources, the challenges, faculty knowledge and practices, and what they call pre-service teachers' needs. In terms of the specifics of what this program is intended to do, one is that to equip the targeted colleges of education and university faculty and lecturers with the skills and experiences necessary to deliver effective instruction to teachers in training. We hope this will be done by, we intend that this is done through the offering of several types of education and training for lecturers, graduate level foundational courses on reading, and it includes a 6-month residence at the Florida State University for those that are being trained, as well as study tours and scholarships for master's programs at the Florida State. Secondly, it is intended to standardize and to align and to link practical, evidence-based pre-service teacher training and content with the primary school literacy curriculum. What this involves on the ground is revisions, for instance, to the language and literacy and practical courses of these colleges and education centers and universities. It also includes the training of lecturers on new materials, the provision of text resources, and the development of centers of excellence. So it is a broad project, but it is a project that has come to complement an already existing program which was initiated by the government of the Republic of Zambia. So we are very, very grateful to the United States government for stepping in and complementing these universities, the effort, and especially the Florida State University for its being one of the counterpart institutions of learning in the United States that's participating in this program.
Thank you, Ambassador Kapambwe. I have a question from a law school alumnus here at the university, a 1968 alumnus. His name is Larry Mulligan. And his question is, having spent 3 months in Galilee in 2014 as a volunteerist at Mar Elias Educational Institute and a month as a volunteerist with an NGO in Ghana in 2016, I would like to know if there are similar opportunities in Zambia, which might match the qualifications of the volunteer with available service opportunities. Is there a similar program in Zambia?
Yes, indeed. First of all, we had the United States Peace Corps, which was more or less the funnel through which the different volunteers would come through. And through the Peace Corps, our government would share the various fields of need in which we are seeking the volunteers. So that is one point of entry. But I understand the Peace Corps has been abolished or going through some orientation. It may not be a very practical entry point anymore. But yes, the skills that he is talking about are skills that are greatly in need in our country. And some of these entry points could be NGOs. We have a number of NGOs, international NGOs, that are especially in the provision of legal resources and resources, expertise in human rights women empowerment, children's protection, and women protection, and so on. So the short answer is yes. And all that he needs to do is write to any embassy and inform us of their intention, and we will forward it to the ministry headquarters, who then will take it to if it's Ministry of Justice or Ministry of Education, then they will see which NGOs are operating in that field, or whether these are services that can be brought on some government-specific programs.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm sure Larry Mulligan has appreciated that answer, and now he has information to act upon.
Indeed.
I'd like to start out now with questions from our students. I first have Matt Heller. Matt, would you join us here and give us your question?
Yeah, thank you so much again, Mr. Ambassador, for joining us this afternoon. As I'm sure you know, many African nations like Zambia have recently been supported by infrastructure loans from China under the Belt and Road Initiative, as well as other investments. So my question is, from your perspective, could the United States be doing more to support Zambian economic development? And what is important from Zambia's perspective when determining its international partnerships?
Well, thank you very much, Matt. I think you are now talking about the heart of the matter. Africa's problem has largely been the huge deficit in infrastructure. Our relations with the United States, between the United States and Africa, have been largely in the social sectors and in governance and in peace and security. Not so much in infrastructure financing or infrastructure development. And that is mostly because in the United States, this is a sector which is almost entirely a private sector driven, profit driven sector. So with that huge deficit for the whole of Africa, we believed that our industrialization and our own development would not succeed without adequate infrastructure. We could not even attract private capital from the Western countries because the cost of doing business, the cost of investment, the cost of production in our countries was so high because of the huge infrastructure deficit. And so in the case of Zambia, we have had relations with China for a very long time, almost predating our independence. And in the early 70s, when, as a result of our support for liberation movements, we came under pressure from the minority governments that surrounded us, the tried to cripple our economy, our infrastructure, bombing our resources and infrastructure. And being a landlocked country dependent on the export of copper, it was extremely important that we have access to the export routes, to the sea. And when we now were being throttled by the liberation, I mean, the minority governments around us, it was China that came to our rescue after we had tried to sell this idea to our friends in the Western countries, but who thought it was not feasible to do. And that is establishing a railway line from the heart of Zambia to Dar es Salaam, to the port of Dar es Salaam, so that we could move our copper cheaply and be able to export. So that is when we started with China in terms of infrastructure development in our country. And at that time, the TAZARA, what is called the Tanzania-Zambia Railway, TAZARA, was the biggest project that China had undertaken around the world. So that was for us a lifeline. And from there, we have had very good friendship, and the infrastructure support from China has increased. However, the deficit, infrastructure deficit, is still so huge that we have not closed, we have never closed our country to investment from any other country and from any other region. And we have gone out, including in the United States, always talking about the investment potential in infrastructure in our country. So in terms of, what could the United States be doing more to support the economic development, besides the various programs that we have now, which are mostly in the social sector? We really are keen to invite the United States to participate in our infrastructure development and in the production, in the productive in industrial sector. And we hope that this will happen. We know that there is concern generally in the United States about the influence that China has in Africa. But I would like to assure you that this is not meant to exclude any others. The needs of Africa are huge. No one country can manage. And the opportunities in Africa are huge. I have been making this point when talking to officials in the United States, where I say that where politics goes, economics follows. When you look at the record of China against the Western countries in terms of the frequency of their visits to Africa and the frequency of the visits of African heads of state to China. In the 10 years from 2009 to 2019, there were 79 visits by the top 3 Chinese officials to Africa. 79, an average of 7.9 per year. And in that same period, there was a total of 15, around 15 visits by high-level European and American delegations to Africa. Between 12 and 15 in a 10-year period. I don't know, since the last administration, in the period of the last administration, probably 3 African countries were invited to the United States. And the top 3, perhaps except the Secretary of State, the Vice President and the President never visited Africa in the 4 years of the administration. What does that mean? Why does that matter? Economics wants the assurance of politics that it is safe to go to a place. And when they see their leaders traveling to a place, business people feel safe and are therefore more willing to invest. On top of that, when top leaders visit each other, there is more spotlight shone and more information that is brought to their attention, more correct information that is brought to the attention of the business sector. And the assurance is that if I invest in this area and I find a problem, I will have my politicians helping me to resolve that problem. So we are trying to send this message to the US that it is important for business to see African heads of state coming to America and American politicians going to Africa. They will feel assured enough to find out more. And indeed, where the president goes, where the vice president goes, the press also goes there. And then you will have more positive stories coming. At the moment, the stories that come from Africa are stories of tragedy. It's only when a natural disaster, or war is raging in a country that you get that information.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I appreciate you giving us so much time on that topic. It's definitely one that Americans are interested in, and you put a lot of context to the issue, so we appreciate that. I now have another question from a student, Susanna Loss. Susanna, could you join us and ask your question, please?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much again, Mr. Ambassador, for being here with us today. I have a quick question just regarding a piece of legislation that was recently introduced in Zambia. Yeah. In March, President Lungu signed into law the Cybersecurity and Cyber Crimes Bill with the purpose of providing a wide variety of online protections against extortion, bullying, blackmail, child predators, harassment, and other concerns. Critics like to point out that similar legislation in other countries has resulted in the encroachment of freedom of speech, such as the shutting down of the internet by a government when it deems that there is a crisis. Could you share some of your thoughts on this bill as well as some of these concerns?
Well, thank you very much. Fortunately for Zambia, we do not have a record of shutting the internet ever. On political grounds. We also have a very open political system. In fact, when you listen to Zambians, they seem to live, they seem to eat, they seem to breathe politics. We are always discussing politics and fighting, in politics. It's a very healthy discussion that is always taking place in Zambia around politics. However, we did not have any laws on cyber issues. And it was felt that the trends that we were seeing in cyberspace, the crimes that were being committed in cyberspace, called for regulation, called for at least the enactment of a law that is going to provide guidance on what is and is not acceptable. So there was a gap because we didn't have a law. So when we had the Cyber Crimes Act, first, in terms of what this does, is it gives us what we consider to be the best that is out there. We came up with a cyber bill based on our research of what was available in other countries, what were the best practices in other countries. And then we tried to incorporate whatever we considered to be the best from there. As a result of that, we have some security safeguards. We have certain assurances. We have worked out the policies and concepts that can help protect the cyber environment in Zambia. We also believe that this bill enhances the freedom that citizens and those residing in Zambia who are currently bullied in cyberspace or attacked without recourse to law, that they now can have some protection. There is also the question of responsibility and accountability. The cyberspace was seen as a place where anything goes, and I cannot be held accountable. We are trying to, through this law, ensure that there is a certain level of responsibility, a certain level of accountability for your actions. If you are a bully on cyberspace, we can use that evidence to prosecute you if somebody brought a charge against you. And these are the following specifics that are being provided in this cyber security law. One is that it provides the security, cyber security. It provides for the protection of citizens or persons living in Zambia against cyber crime. Then child online protection. We have had, we are a victim of human trafficking and child prostitution and things like that. We also, unfortunately, are a victim of extreme forms of pornography which come on this unregulated stuff, especially child pornography and so on. So these are some of the things we are trying to address. Child online protection is important for us. This bill also facilitates the identification, the declaration and protection of critical information infrastructure. It enables the collection of evidence where a crime has been committed, the collection of and preservation of evidence on computer, for instance, and network-related crimes. And this electronic evidence is now admissible in courts of law by this act. Before that, that was not considered as evidence because we didn't have a law that specifically mentioned that as allowable evidence. And of course, there's going to be critics, and politics is about criticizing each other. And our political players sometimes have misrepresented the intentions of government on this matter. This was a bill that came from the grassroots, that came from the protestations of our parents who felt that government was doing nothing to protect the kids against child pornography or child and human trafficking of young girls, etc. So but of course, the critics are saying this is an instrument that is going to affect the human rights of people, the privacy and so on. But the bill does contain sufficient safeguards against misuse by the government vis-a-vis the human rights and the privacy that is also guaranteed to ordinary people. So the target essentially is dealing with cyber crimes. It's dealing with cyber criminals. And one of my officers in talking about this was saying it is like being on a road without traffic lights. And when you come to an intersection, anything goes. There are no traffic police, there are no traffic lights. It's everyone for themselves. This is the kind of chaos that we had. This was the deficit that we had in our country before adopting this cyber. So I just would like to reiterate the assurance of government, even at the passing of this cyber crimes bill, that it will not be used against political opponents. It will not be used against ordinary citizens who have committed no crimes. And that issues of privacy will be respected.
Thank you for clarification on that topic. I want to go to another student. We're quickly running out of time, unfortunately, but our next student is Tom Driscoll. Tom, would you join us and ask your question, please?
Thank you so much for being here. Recently in Virginia and other states, there have been movements for the restoration of rights for those who have served their time following a conviction for a felony crime. Zambia, meanwhile, has extended the right to vote and conducted registrations for those who are currently in prison. Can you tell us how this came to be and how Zambians generally feel about this change?
Again, it's one of those issues that has been used like a political football. There are critics, there are people from both sides. But the issue is that we have an electoral act which provided that under one of its sections that a person shall not be entitled to vote at an election at the date of the election if that person is in lawful custody or that person's freedom of movement is restricted under any written law. So an NGO, a concerned NGO interested in human rights, took the government to court on these restrictions. This was the basis upon which our prisoners could not vote. And the ruling of the court was that this was unconstitutional. The denial of voting rights to somebody who is incarcerated was a violation of that person's constitutional right to vote. So that is how come we were now forced as government to repeal that section in the Electoral Act. And for now, our prisoners can vote. But they will be voting for the first time during the elections on August 12. So it was not something that the Zambian government itself started. It was the challenge of an NGO that brought about this bill. And we'll be seeing it for the first time implemented this coming elections. And we're looking forward to that. And we hope that it is going to set a precedent in other countries where similar challenges may be brought against the governments, our governments, who have bills of rights which guarantee certain things, including the right to vote to their people. So yes, there has been concern by some parties, political players, who feel that perhaps the prisoners could be goaded to go and vote for this candidate or that candidate. But that is not going to happen. As I said at the beginning, the strength of institutions will ensure that this doesn't happen, just as this is proof of the strength of governance institutions when a government can be forced to repeal its laws in order to guarantee the human rights of its citizens.
That is for sure. Definitely a testament to Zambia's rule of law. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I have one more question coming from Catherine Snyder. Catherine?
Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Ambassador. This has been so informative. So as you know, we here in the U.S. are in a period that most would describe as tumultuous, with civil discourse between the parties seemingly in a deep valley. I know you touched on this a bit, but can you further describe the circumstances in Zambia in regards to civil discourse between citizens as it relates to the political process?
Yes, Catherine, like I said, politics is always a very interesting, process. And we have been going through periodic changes of the Constitution, periodic amendments of the Constitution, because each Constitution is found to have lacunas, is found to have weaknesses in terms of guaranteeing the political processes. One of the things that we have concern about in our political system, in our political process, in fact, let me mention two. One is the tendency towards factionalism, sectionalism. And we try to appeal to our political players not to invoke these cleavages, natural cleavages, whether they are based on region or race or color or tribe and things like that. We have seen that tendency growing, where appeals are made to the basic instincts. And then what that does is lead to this second concern, which is electoral violence, where the supporters of the different groups treat each other as not just political, players on opposite side, but as actual enemies. And we are worried about the aspects of political violence. And so at every electoral cycle, the Electoral Commission, and this is also an area where we are greatly assisted by the United States through institutions like the Carter Center and through the direct assistance that is given to the Electoral Commission to organize public sensitization workshops to discourage conflict, to discourage violence, to discourage even incendiary language, and to discourage these tendencies towards dividing us. Fortunately, in our country, the experience we've had is that if you went a few days before an election in Zambia and listened to the campaigns of the politicians, you will get the impression that there's going to be a civil war soon after the elections. As soon as the elections are over, it generally is so peaceful. The political temperatures just go down and Zambians accept the verdict. There may be a politician here and there that may not accept the verdict, but we have been fortunate that the international observers that we invite, of course, there will be criticism about how we conduct some of these elections on the ground, There will be lapses with the Electoral Commission. Sometimes the ballot boxes arrived late. Sometimes, the transportation was difficult and the counting took longer than people expected. But in the final analysis, the population does come to accept that what we conduct are credible elections by and large. And this helps a great deal to bring down the temperatures. So our preoccupation during this period until August is to ensure that we carry out effective sensitization within the political process to ensure that we discourage this regionalism or factionalism or tribalism and any other ism that will be divisive. And secondly, violence, that our political players discourage their supporters from engaging in acts of violence. So far, we have been lucky. With all the elections, the incidents where you hear of Zambians who have lost their lives in the political process, they are very, very, very minimal. So we hope that we can once again rise to the challenge and get a credible and peaceful election.
That sounds like we have a lot in common, except it sounds like your people tend to relax a little bit quicker than our people are doing right now. But I can see we're definitely great partners and
Indeed.
have a lot in common. Well, Mr. Ambassador, Ambassador Kapambwe, I thank you so much for giving us your time. It was such an informative dialogue, and I do look forward to that opportunity when we can be together in person.
Thanks, Damon, and thank you to each and every one of you for your interest in my country. And I would like to extend an invitation once COVID is done for all of you who came to have an opportunity and come and visit us. I hope that you would like it. One of the assets that we have in Zambia is this warmth of our people. We may not have much, but people are warm, they are friendly, and they are more than happy to share the little they have with you when you visit. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.